So today's webinar is going to be about how to conduct a content audit for SEO. And today we are joined by Georgious Chasiotis, or you can refer to him as George Chasiotis, who is the managing director of Minutia, which is a content and SEO agency that helps SaaS and tech companies drive organic growth. George has been mentioned in or has written for sites and publications like Founder, G2, OpenView, CoSchedule, SERPstat, Growth Mentor, and HackerNoon. And in his free time, he reads psychology and tries to understand the why behind human behavior. So today he is going to be our host. But before we start, I want to make sure that everyone can see and hear us. I can see that people are watching us. Can somebody say hello? I'm actually hoping that everyone. Okay. Hello, Hendrik. Thanks. Thanks from Denmark, letting us know that everything is fine. So we're going to wait a little bit for everybody else to roll in, but in the meantime, I just want to let everyone know what is going to happen. So George is going to talk for about 30-40 minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A session. If you have any questions that you want to ask George during the presentation, during the webinar, you're welcome to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to try to filter all the comments that you guys are going to be sending in to stop George if something is worth stopping and talking more about. All right, so just make sure to find that chat. Throw in your questions if you have any, and we'll get to them whenever it's appropriate. And without further ado, I'm gonna let George kick it off. So take it away, George.
Sure. First of all, thank you for getting my name right. That's very important to me. And it's very good to be here. Today, as you mentioned, we are going to talk about content audit for SEO. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that today's webinar is going to be slightly technical. So in that context, whenever you have a question, something that's not so clear, feel free to put it in the comments so that Andrew can ask the question and we can answer it right away, okay? Whenever we are ready, we can basically start.
Yeah, I'm going to switch the screen. Sure. Take it away.
Okay, let me just share my screen then. Okay, can you all see my screen? I hope you can. As I mentioned, today we're going to talk about a content audit and a content audit that focuses on search engine optimization, SEO. Okay, here's an agenda of what we are going to cover throughout this presentation. First of all, we are going to answer the most obvious question: why do you need to conduct an audit in the first place? Okay. Next, we are going to talk a bit about our process when it comes to conducting a content audit, about the data that you are going to need to retrieve from various data sources in order to conduct the audit. What are the criteria that you have to use in order to judge the pages that you will include in the audit? What are the actions that you will take based on the criteria that you've set and the data that you've gathered? How you can prioritize these actions, because as you can imagine, you cannot do all things at once. What to pay attention to when you're conducting the audit, before, while, and after. And last but not least, what you're going to need to be able to do everything that we are going to cover in today's presentation, okay? So let's start with the question, why do you need to conduct a content audit in the first place? The first reason, and the most prominent one, is because you have pages, assuming of course that you have an active blog, okay, that you're publishing content regularly. Chances are, if that happens, that you have pages that underperform and you need to find those pages and to fix them, okay? In many cases, we have noticed that those pages do not let your website breathe. And we have noticed also that they can possibly have a negative effect on the performance of the website as a whole, okay? And last but not least, the third reason why you need to conduct a content audit is because you have to try to give only the best that you have, both to search engines and to your visitors, okay? So these are the three most prominent reasons that answer basically the why behind our content audit, okay? What is the process that you need to follow in very simplistic terms when it comes to doing a content audit, performing a content audit for your website. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have created a template, or which, by the way, can be, as you will see later on in this presentation, just a simple Google Sheet. Okay, and so the first step is to create a template where you will put all the data and you will keep all the actions for each of the pages that you're going to include in the audit. Next, you have to actually go on and gather data from data sources as, for example, SEO ranking. Okay. And last but not least, you have to assign an action to each of the pages included in the content audit and start working towards those actions. Okay, and we will discuss more on that a bit later in the presentation. So when it comes to the data, okay, what data do you need in order to perform a content audit that's focused on SEO? First of all, because I would say that conversions and the performance of your website business-wise is connected to how your website performs organic-wise. So the first category of data that you will need is conversions and assisted conversions. Okay, this is something that you can get easily from Google Analytics. Okay, assuming, of course, that you have everything set up in your Google Analytics account. Next, you're going to need organic traffic and keyword visibility data. Okay, and when we say organic traffic, as you will see in the next slide, we're essentially talking about number of organic sessions and the number of organic keywords. Your data sources here can be Google Analytics for organic sessions and SEO ranking for the number of organic keywords for each of the pages included in the content audit. Okay, and last but not least, we are definitely going to need data that are connected to the link equity that each page on our website included in the content audit has. Okay, and when we say link equity, we basically mean the number of referring domains for each page included in the audit. Okay, and your data source here can be, once again, SEO ranking. Now, let's get a bit more specific when it comes to the data that you're going to need in order to perform a well-informed content audit for your website. First of all, we are going to need, as we mentioned previously, conversions or any kind of action with monetary value within your website. Okay, for example, if you're running a SaaS company, then I would assume that an action that's important to you and that's connected to the bottom line of your business is signups. So you should take signups, the number of signups for each page generated by each page, as one of the data sources, as one of the data points that you will include in the content audit. And obviously, as I mentioned previously, Google Analytics can be your data source here. Okay, assisted conversions, which is connected to the first one, with a time window of 30 days, according to Google Analytics. Once again, this is a bit trickier to retrieve and to find within Google Analytics. It's not so straightforward, but rest assured that assisted conversions can make a big difference when it comes to evaluating the performance of a page. And quite frankly, we didn't pay attention to assisted conversions when we were performing content audits, but when we basically understood the value that assisted conversions have, especially when it comes to top of the funnel traffic and intent, we basically made it an integral part of our content audits. Okay. Next, we are going to need the number of sessions coming from organic search only, according to Google Analytics, the number of organic keywords for each of the pages included in the content audit, according to SEO ranking, and last but not least, when it comes to our main data, we are going to need the number of referring domains for each of the pages included in the audit, according, once again, to SEO ranking. Okay. Now, even though that's the main data that you can use basically, and you're fine when it comes to your content audit, we like to take things a step forward, and we like to add some more data into the mix in order to be able to get even more, to make even more well-informed decisions when it comes to each page we include in the audit. In any case, let me just answer the question that Danai asked. And let me just say, when we basically say assisted conversions, Danai, that's a great question, by the way. And I knew that there will be a question when it comes to assisted conversions. We basically mean, a page may not be directly generating, for example, signups, okay? But it may help other pages through assisted conversions. So a user may, for example, visit our website today, okay? And they may have signed up in 15 days from today. The first page that the user visited when they first visited our website is going to be credited with the assisted conversion here. Is that clear? Because this is very important. And as I mentioned previously, even though, obviously conversions such as signups are important when it comes to evaluating the performance of a website, assisted conversions are extremely important as well, because they can give you another view of pages that may not be directly connected, tied to your bottom line or to the actions that are important to you, but they may be indirectly connected. Just let me know if that's a satisfying answer, and we will continue with our presentation. Okay, and let me just share my screen once more. That's great. And so we discussed the main data that you will need for your content audit and that we take into account when it comes to conducting a content audit. Now we are going to discuss supplementary data, okay? And as I mentioned previously, this is not necessary, but if you want to have an even wider view of the performance of each page included in the content audit, you may have to include some of these data points in your content audit as well. So first of all, we have the number of internal links for each of the pages included in the audit. And I would say that the reason for that is pretty obvious, okay? If, for example, this is just an example that we will see a bit later in the presentation, the recommended action for one of the pages is to be redirected or merged with another page. Then you would like to know if this page has many internal links. Why? In order to change the links to the old page to the final page, to the final destination, okay? Next, you definitely need to know the date that the page was last modified or updated, okay? This is a piece of information that you can extract either from the page's HTML, for example, or through the XML sitemap in some cases, okay? Next, you definitely need to know what the target keyword for the page is, if there is a target keyword. Not all pages, by the way, have to have a target keyword, okay? Next, you definitely need to know or to have an overview of whether or not the organic traffic of your page is growing, declining, or has reached a plateau. And the same applies to the organic keywords and to the referring domains, okay? Because if, for example, you know that for a page that is important to you, that generates conversions, that generates assisted conversions, and so on and so forth, the organic traffic performance and the organic keywords are declining, then you don't need anything else. Basically, you just know that right away that you have to go on and update that page, for example, or take an action that will help you start growing again, okay? Now, we have discussed the data. As you can see here, we have a screenshot from our own Google Sheet template when it comes to conducting an audit. And here we saw, for example, how we get backlinks and keywords, backlinks in terms of referring domains, and keywords from SE ranking, okay? This is the first step in our process, collecting the main data for our content audit. Then we are going to collect the supplementary data, even though, once again, this is really optional, because just from the main data points that you have enough information to make well-informed decisions, okay? We just mentioned the supplementary data as an extra layer, let's say, of information. And the second step when it comes to conducting a content audit, after gathering all the data and putting everything into the template that you have built, or it can be just a simple Google Sheet, okay, you have to establish some benchmarks. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that basically is that if you know, for example, that the average conversions that a page has in order to be considered, a page that we need to leave as is 10 per month, then anything that's below that you may have to take an action about it, okay? So the next logical step in our process, after having all the data gathered in one place in a Google Sheet, as I mentioned previously, is to establish some benchmarks for each of the data points you're going to use in order to judge the pages in your content audit, okay? And this, I know this may seem a bit weird, the screenshot that I have attached here, but this is just our way of doing things, of performing a content audit, okay? You can keep it as simple as you want, but it's extremely important to establish some benchmarks in order to know what's considered to be good and what's considered to be average and what's considered to be not so good, and we have to take an action about it, okay? After establishing those benchmarks and knowing basically where you are in terms of conversions, in terms of referring domains, in terms of keywords and sessions, you have to set some thresholds, what I mentioned in the previous slide. And you have to say, for example, that my minimum threshold, when it comes to the number of keywords, for example, based on the data that I have retrieved and gathered, is 140 keywords, okay? Anything that's below that, I have to take a closer look at, okay? Because most pages on my website are above this threshold, and thus a page that's below basically is a page that I have to do something about, okay? And after setting those thresholds, you're basically ready to start assigning actions to each of the pages included in the content audit. And this is where things get really, really interesting, okay? Because by actions, we basically mean, these are the 4 actions, by the way, we assign automatically to each page included in a content audit. We will say that a page will either have to be deleted, removed completely from the website because it doesn't add any value whatsoever, as we will see in the following slides. We may have to leave the page exactly as it is. We don't want to mess with it because it's a great page, it performs well, it gets us conversions, and so on and so forth. We either have to redirect or merge the page with another page. And last but not least, we have to conduct a manual review to the page because we are not sure with the data that we have whether or not this page falls under the 3 categories that I just mentioned in the beginning, okay? Delete, leave as is, or redirect or merge, okay? Now, here's where here's a screenshot of how we assign actions, as you can see. And obviously, assigning actions with our content audit template is an automated process. However, once again, you don't need to have such a template in order to make well-informed decisions. You can just bring everything in a Google Sheet and just make sure that with a couple of formulas, basically, you make the best decision that you can, the best possible decision that you can for that page based on the data that you have. Okay, let's get to the criteria and let's dive a bit deeper into how we basically evaluate each of the pages included in our content audit. Okay, so first the first action that we described and that we mentioned was delete 404. Okay, when are we going to say that the page has to be deleted? When the conversions are 0 or any other action that's important to you and that it's tied to the value that you get from organic traffic, when organic sessions and keywords are 0, and when we have no backlinks whatsoever for this page. Okay, so as you can understand, practically, this is a page that adds no value whatsoever to our website, both from a business standpoint, but also from an organic standpoint. So in that case, we will say that this page will have to be deleted. Okay, it doesn't add any value whatsoever. Next, we are going to say that the page has to be, we have to leave it exactly as it is when our conversions are, for that page, obviously, are above the threshold that we've set. Okay, our sessions and keywords are above the threshold that we've set, and our number of referring domains for that page is once again above the threshold that we've set. Okay, you don't need to worry about taking notes from all the things that we mentioned, because you will have access to the presentation. Okay. Next, redirect or merge. When do we say in general that we have to redirect or merge a page with another page? Conversions here are pretty much irrelevant. Okay, we pay attention mostly to sessions and referring domains. In general, pages that we have to redirect or merge with another page are pages that don't get any traffic whatsoever, even though they have backlinks pointing back to them, even though they have referring domains. This is why we have referring domains above 0. Okay. Next, we have manual review. And as you can imagine, pages that we have to manually review are all the other pages, basically, that don't fall in any of the 3 above mentioned categories. Okay. Let me just stop sharing my screen just to check if there are any questions that we may have to answer. So we have a question: how can you measure conversions? That's based on basically what's important, as I mentioned previously, what's important to you and your website. If you are an e-commerce shop, obviously conversions are for you are sales. Okay. If you are a software as a service, a SaaS, then conversions or an important action with monetary value could be signups. Okay, that's totally based on your business model and your business in general. Okay, let me share my screen once again, and in the meantime, feel free to share any questions that you may have. That's great. Let's get to present once more. Please bear with me because we have a couple very important things to cover until the end. And so we covered the manual review as well. Okay. Now, a logical question at this point could be, okay, George, so far so good, but where do we start with these things? Because we cannot do everything at once. Okay. Where do we start with that? First of all, I would say that you have to consider deleting the pages that add no value whatsoever to your website. Okay. So first of all, delete 404. Okay. Then the second step would be to handle all the cases where you need to redirect or merge a page with another page. Okay. And last but not least, because quite frankly, this is the most time-consuming part, you have to start working on content updates based on the pages that you have seen as you have identified as an opportunity, but you've seen that those pages perform well, but they could perform much better if we have conducted an update, a content update to them. Of course, how exactly you conduct a content update could be a separate webinar by its own, because it's a multidimensional, I would say, topic. But I would say that when it comes to prioritization, first you have to mess with the pages that you need to delete, remove completely from your website, because they most likely keep the performance of your website down. Then redirect or merge, and last but not least, conduct content updates, okay, to the pages that you have identified as opportunities, and that through your content audit and through the data that you have, that those pages can do better, okay, and they can contribute better and more to my business and to my organic visibility as a whole. Okay. Now, this is extremely important, and please pay attention to it. What to pay attention to when conducting a content audit. Okay. The first thing that I'd like you to pay attention to when conducting a content audit is that when we add a 301 redirect, when we redirect a page to another page, in other words, we also have to remove that page from the XML sitemap. This page has shouldn't be in our XML sitemap after redirecting it to another page. Okay. The second point that I'd like you to pay attention to is that when we add a 301 redirect, we also have to change all the internal links so that they point to the new URL. This is something that we've discussed earlier when we discussed about supplementary data, and one of the data points that we mentioned was internal links. Okay, because why we say that? Because as I mentioned previously, let's say that you have a page that your action as per your content audit would be to redirect this page to another page, but you see that this page has 500 internal links. Then I would say that you had to consider or reconsider whether or not it is worth redirecting this page. Okay, because the last thing you would like is to create to have to change manually 500 internal links so that they point to the new URL. Okay. The third point is that some of the pages we need to update may have to be repurposed to target another term. This, in order to know that, obviously, you have to have access to a keyword data provider, such as SEO ranking, and you have to see and monitor closely. This is why this is where manual review comes in handy, because you have to see that this page that initially was published and we created it believing that we will rank for this keyword has been associated from Google to another keyword. Okay, and thus you may, when you decide to conduct the content update, you may have to repurpose the page to target another term. Okay. The fourth point that we have here is to always make sure to manually review every page before deleting or redirecting it. Okay, I would say that nowadays in our content audits, even though, as I mentioned previously, we have automated a big part of the process, we go on and manually review every page before assigning a final action. And the reason for that is, the last thing that we would like is to say that, okay, this page, for example, generates no conversions, it has no links, it gets no organic traffic, and it has no organic keywords. Let's delete it without taking a look at the actual page. And then when you do that, you actually see that this was an important page because it may have been the first page that the founder of the company published when they started the company, and thus it has, I would say, an emotional value for the company. Okay, so in any case, I would highly recommend that you manually review every page before you take a final action. Okay. Also, something that's often unnoticed from SEO, from an SEO perspective, is product marketing. Okay, because, and this is extremely important, not every page has to have a target term, an assigned keyword. Okay, if you base your website and your website's growth in keywords, then I would say that there is something wrong with your strategy, because let's face it, not every page has to have an assigned keyword. Okay, you have to have, and you have to publish pages on your website that simply don't target any terms whatsoever. Okay. Next, second to last point, keep all data in one place, as well as try to keep a data snapshot, which in other words means that when you, what was the date that you extracted, for example, organic sessions data from Google Analytics. It's good to always, note down the date to remember when you made the export, and so on and so forth. Okay, and also you have to be very, very well organized and keep all data in one place, such as a Google Sheet, as we mentioned earlier. And the last point that I'd like to make, especially if you don't have the time to perform the content audit, would be to have a junior person handle data input, for example, and someone in a senior position in your company make final decisions, because you wouldn't want to have someone in a junior position make the decisions of whether or not, for example, pages should be deleted or redirected and merged with other pages, or updated, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, we've covered pretty much everything. The only thing that we haven't covered is what you're going to need in order to perform the content audit. And what you're going to need is basically Google Sheets. Google Sheets is ideal for content audits, as we mentioned here, with less than 10,000 pages. If you want, or if you are thinking to audit more pages than that, which is highly unlikely, you may have to consider another solution such as BigQuery, for example. Next, you are going to definitely need some data providers in order to extract the data and gather them in one place and keep them very well organized in one place. And your data providers here can be Google Search Console, Google Analytics, both of them free products by Google. And definitely you're going to need a tool that provides you with keyword and backlink data. In our case, we recommend and we use SE ranking. Okay. And last but not least, please don't underestimate this, because this is extremely important. You are going to need a person who is going to conduct the manual audit, a content reviewer, okay, and also someone who is going to do the content and handle the content updates, okay. With that, we finish with our presentation on how to conduct a content audit for SEO, okay. Now, as I mentioned previously, we are going to basically share the link of the presentation, so you don't need to take any notes whatsoever. Before we go, any questions that we can answer? Anything at all that wasn't clear? I know that the information is too much and it may have been overwhelming, but anything that we could answer now before we go? So we need to keep records of client calls, signups. If that's an important action for your website, definitely yes. It always depends, as I mentioned previously. When we say conversions, I don't speak Robert here. When we say basically conversions, we mean, as I mentioned previously, any kind of action that's important to you and your business. Okay. Hope that answers your question. How frequently do we have to conduct this content audit? That's a great question as well. I would say that this depends on how frequently, for example, you publish content, okay? How many content creators you have and how much content do you put out there. In general, in websites that have a high volume of content created and published on their website, I would recommend every 4 to 6 months, okay? It would be redundant to do it, for example, every month. There is no point really to do it every month. So I would say that every 4 to 6 months is okay. Of the 4 actions you cover, where do you feel most sites should invest their time? I would say content update, because we have seen great results when it comes to updating content that has potential, though. You have to update something that actually there is something there, Otherwise, what's the point of updating the page in the first place? Hope that makes sense. Does Google penalize you for deleting content? As far as I'm concerned, no. Google doesn't penalize you for deleting content, especially if that content adds no value whatsoever to your audience, to people who visit your website, and to the search engines as well. Okay. Can you explain? Yeah, of course. I would say a great example here is when you have overlapping information. For example, you have 4 or 5 different blog posts that basically talk about the same thing. Okay. Here, in this case, you may notice that those pages, it's what we call cannibalize each other, which means that they try to rank for the same terms organically. Okay. So in that case, what's the point of having 4 or 5 different pages talking about the same thing? You can put all these resources into one place with an evergreen, nice, clean URL and keep them there. Okay, it would be much better for you and your business to monitor things for one page rather than for 4 or 5 pages. This is a great example, and this is something, by the way, that we see very often. Can you do it all in-house, or do you need an external agency? That's a great question as well. It depends. I would say that obviously we are an agency, so I'm a bit biased here, as you can imagine. But I would say that it depends. If you have to audit 50 pages, no, you don't need an agency for that. You can just do it by yourself, But if you have a website that has never been audited and you have, 5,000 pages, then I guess that it would be better to ask a professional opinion, at least. Okay. Can you add something more about prioritization? I would say that when it comes to prioritization, after having the actions defined, the final actions defined for each of the pages, including the content audit, Francesco, there isn't much more to say when it comes to prioritization. What I can tell you though, and what I can share that I didn't share earlier, is that when it comes to deciding after you have deleted, after you have redirected, when it comes to deciding what pages you should, for example, update first, then you have to dive a bit deeper into your data and see that, for example, we see that this page generates conversions for the business, signups, whatever, okay, whatever is your goal. So, and we see at the same time that for XY reasons, this page performance has started declining, okay? As you can imagine, this should be one of the first pages that you should update, okay? So I would say that when it comes to prioritization, I would exclude delete and redirect or merge, and I would focus more on content updates, because the first two are really straightforward. You just have to delete and redirect or merge. Simple as that. But when it comes to content updates, you have to dive a bit deeper into the data and basically try to understand what pages are really important to you and that you have to take an action now. Okay. Can you share your thoughts about not using keywords for every page? Of course. We work at Minutia, we work mostly with SaaS and tech companies, okay? And SaaS companies, one of the things that they do is, if Andrew had voice, he could confirm on that, is that they have, for example, product updates, okay? As you can imagine, a product update is very important, okay? We have added a new feature, for example, and we want to talk about it on our blog. But quite frankly, you don't need to have an assigned keyword behind that page. So I would say that in general, and keep in mind that we are a content SEO agency. I mean, I could tell you that no, every page has to have a target keyword, and keywords are the best. But it's not like that. If your website is built based or on target keywords, then definitely there is something wrong. Okay, because you have to publish other content as well that's not optimized for a search audience. Okay, and an example of that is a product update, as I mentioned previously, a new feature, something that's happening in our company and that people have to know. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's get to the next one. If the content I create is used on multiple sites, should I create a canonical URL to the original site it comes from, especially if I'm planning to update the content is used on multiple sites? If you mean that the content that you create exists on different websites, then as I can understand, and as far as I'm concerned, that wouldn't be a good thing, okay? Because you have to have as unique content as possible if you own, for example, different properties online, okay? If you mean something else, please put it in the comments and I will further elaborate. But if this is what if that's what you mean, I would say that you have to keep the content as unique as possible. Having a duplicate content on different websites is not something that we recommend. So unless we have anything else, guys, we'd like to thank you, both me and Andrew and SC Ranking for joining us today. As I mentioned, Andrew, I guess, SC Ranking will handle that to share the link to the presentation, because I want all of you to have it and to have access to it. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and I really hope to and look forward to more webinars like that. Okay, cheers.